Right, thank you very much, Wendy. Ready to go.
Okay,
Tony, take your camera down.
My camera down, yeah.
You're recording, Chair.
Right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Committee of the 2nd of March. I'm County Councillor Ruth Edwards, Chair of the Planning Committee. So welcome public, officers and members, and I'll read out what I have to at the start of each committee meeting. This is being held remotely, although I myself and a couple of others are in County Hall at the moment. The meeting has been held in accordance with the emergency legislation that enables the Council to hold this meeting remotely, alongside the Council's constitution, and ensures that the Council can continue to operate and make democratic decisions in an open and transparent way. I would like to remind members that this meeting is still being live streamed to the public, and can I request that you all switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you are speaking directly to the committee to ensure that there is no unnecessary background noise. All sections of the members' code of conduct will apply to members in this virtual meeting environment and are as applicable now as they are in a traditional meeting setting. Can I also remind members of the meeting to ensure that chat functionality is switched on, and should they wish to speak on a particular item, to make the request clear in that area, and I will invite you to speak at the relevant point in the meeting, where you would then unmute your microphone and switch your camera on. So please be patient and don't interrupt unless you have put your hand up and I've invited you in. Decisions of this remote committee will hold the same weight as a decision of a normal planning committee, provided that the meeting remains quorate and meets its legislative requirements to make a decision, regardless of whether a member of this meeting is unable to cast a vote due to technical issues. And we do have those from time to time. It's all technology today. The decision of that committee then will remain valid. Do I have any apologies for absence today at all, Wendy, please?
No apologies received, Chair, but Councillor Feakins may be late joining the meeting.
Thank you. Sorry I'm calling you Wendy, but thank you, Richard. Nice to have you on board as usual. Right, so there's no apologies. Any declarations of interest, please, from members?
Chair, there's no hand, but not a declaration of interest, but on item 4.2, the Caldicot Town Council representative can't come and speak for family reasons, and I've been asked to present the Town Council's views on that matter. Is that okay, Chair?
I believe that's okay for you to speak, Councillor, but I don't believe then you would be able to cast a vote.
That's correct. I will abstain. Right.
Thank you very much, Councillor Eason. As for confirming the meetings, is there anybody at all that has any legitimate accuracy things they'd like to raise for the meeting, the last meeting that we had in February? Is it somebody wish to move that the meeting? Yes, thank you, Councillor Murphy. I will sign those at the end of the meeting. Thank you. Before we do carry on now with the reports, I'm sure you will share with me, and I've sent a card on behalf of the Planning Committee to Phil Thomas, one of our senior planning officers who's just recently lost his father, so he won't be with us today. So I've already done that on behalf of the committee. So now we will go on to item 4 on the agenda to consider the applications of today. Right, Craig, are you doing this one, Craig?
It's like Amy Longford will be conducting.
Right, thank you. It'll be Amy. This is application DM 2020/00881 at Bushes Farm at Earlswood. Thank you, Amy.
That's right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. So my name is
yourself, please, so that those outside who don't normally join us on a planning committee, will all officers please introduce themselves as well, please?
Of course, thank you. So my name is Amy Longford. I'm the Heritage and Areas Application Manager here in Monmouthshire. So this application is DM 2020/00881 and the removal of the condition 1 from planning consent 2341, which relates to the restricted occupation of the proposed bungalow. The application is presented to committee at the request of the local member. So as you can see on the slides, Bushes Farm is located off Chapel Road on the outskirts of Earlswood. As the slide shows, the building is located just to the south of the hamlet of Earlswood in the rural area just east of Wentwood. The bungalow was built in the 1970s, following planning permission being granted on the basis of an agricultural occupancy condition, restricting the occupancy of the building, which is as follows. So, occupation of the proposed bungalow, shall be limited to a person employed or last employed wholly or mainly locally in agriculture, as defined in section 291 of the Town and Country Planning Act 197, or dependent of such person residing with him. The next slide shows the floor plan of the bungalow. Just move on, thank you. So the bungalow in question has 3 bedrooms, kitchen, dining, living room, and a bathroom with a small garden and some off-street parking. It's currently in a poor state of repair and has been vacant for over 12 years. The current condition of the site is very poor, with part of the roof over the extension having failed. The condition of the building means that it's not habitable, as there is no operable WC facilities or an equipped kitchen. Access to the building is mainly internally limited, as the site is quite overgrown. The application seeks permission to remove the occupancy condition, or AOC, or commonly referred to as an agricultural tie. The removal of the condition will allow an unfettered residential use of the building, being able to be occupied by anyone, facilitating a sale on the open market with an unrestricted residential use. So the photographs here do show us the current state of the property. That is the rear lean-to extension where the roof has failed, and you can see how overgrown the site is. Again, that's another picture of inside that portion of the building. This photograph shows the inside of the living room, showing damp coming through the chimney breast. So, as per the officer's report, so when considering the removal of any occupancy restrictions, the following considerations need to be taken into account, as all set out in Welsh Government guidance. Technical Advice Note 6, Planning for Sustainable Rural Communities, is a good practice guidance issued in December 2011, which states, well, there will be a need to demonstrate with supporting evidence that there is no longer a rural enterprise need for the dwelling or local affordable housing need in the area. The long-standing mechanism for demonstrating the absence of need has been market testing. Evidence of effective market testing will be required over a reasonable period, usually 12 months. Critical aspects of the market testing are the availability of the property is advertised in such a manner that compliant purchasers or tenants are likely to be made aware of it, and that the price or rent attached to the property reflects the restrictive occupancy requirement. The value of any property subject to an occupancy restriction will be less than its value on the open market. Traditionally, agricultural dwellings have been marketed at prices between 70 and 75% of their open market value. So if we consider these issues in relation to this application, in terms of market testing, from the evidence provided and fully explained in the officer's report, the property has been marketed for 18 months starting in the summer of 2019, prior to any COVID restrictions. The property has been advertised with relevant and appropriate agents for a property with an occupancy condition such as this. The site has been advertised with 0.25 acres of land. However, it is important to note that the relevant farming activity does not have to take place on this site. The agents have reported general interest from the public. However, the majority of interest from parties who would not comply with the occupancy condition. The remaining interest from other parties, from 2 parties, neither submitted an offer. However, more recently, a case officer has been contacted directly from an interested party who complies with the occupancy restrictions. In relation to the valuation, the property was marketed for £200,000 following 3 valuations being provided. The valuation of the property was independently considered by the district valuer, who stated that they feel that the valuation should be £185,000. This takes into account a 30% reduction in the overall value due to the occupancy restriction, reflects the current condition of the property and the financial clawback of 50% uplift should the tie be removed. Officers consider that the asking price will be subject to negotiation, and therefore the £200,000 is a realistic marketing price. The marketing is therefore considered to be appropriate and is not in question. So turning to paragraph 4.3.15, I think we have another slide on this, or if we go back just a couple, please. There we go, that's perfect, thank you. So paragraph 4.13.5 of TAN 6 states that where planning applications are received to lift an existing agricultural occupancy condition, or where enforcement action has been taken for non-compliance, the planning authority should consider replacing the existing agricultural occupancy condition with the rural enterprise dwelling condition set out in paragraph 4.13.1. This will often be justified to ensure that the dwelling is kept available to meet housing needs of rural workers and local people in affordable housing. So in relation to affordable housing and maintaining a property to meet housing needs of rural workers and local people, it's considered that important to maintain a stock of dwellings suitable to meet the needs of the rural community now and in the future. Within the last 7 years, 11 applications have been made for new rural enterprise dwellings, and is this provision of dwellings with the modern equivalent of an agricultural tie, together with the interest, albeit limited, generated from the marketing, it is therefore considered that there is a demand for such properties within the county. In relation to the affordable housing issues, the guidance states that where buildings are subject to removing an occupancy restriction, the buildings should be kept available to meet the needs of rural workers. In this instance, the resident social landlords were contacted, however, none were able to take on the property due to its condition and the funding required to bring it into a habitable condition. Therefore, the property is not considered suitable for affordable housing provision. In relation to the replacement condition, as per paragraph in TAN 6, which we've just explained, it is recommended that agricultural occupancy condition is replaced with the more flexible rural enterprise condition. This condition allows for the use of the building for those employed in a wider scope of rural enterprises and for occupants who meet the authority's housing criteria. For clarity, I'll explain. The occupancy of the dwelling should be restricted to a person solely or mainly working or last working in a rural enterprise in the locality, or a widow, widower, or surviving civil partner of such a person, and to any resident dependents, or if it can be demonstrated that there are no such eligible occupiers, or a person or persons who would be eligible for consideration for affordable housing under the local authority's housing policies, or a widow, widower, or surviving civil partner of any such person or resident dependents. So the removal of an agricultural occupancy condition is generally resisted, as the policy aims to ensure that sufficient affordable dwellings are available for agricultural workers in the countryside. In order to remove an agricultural occupancy condition, the application must comply with the tests set out in paragraph 8.27 of TAN 6, the practical guidance of December 2011. Ensuring
I'll see if I can get Wendy to help you to get in.
Sorry, is that a question? Can we leave those to the end of the presentation? I'll just carry on for clarity. So I'm going to go back a step. In order to remove an agricultural occupancy condition, the application must comply with the test set out in paragraph 8.27 of TAN 6 and the practical guidance in 2011 to ensure appropriate marketing with a realistic price. In this case, the applicants have demonstrated that the property was marketed for a period of at least 12 months and in a manner that the advertisements would be seen by relative tenants or purchasers, and that the marketing price was within reasonable parameters. Whilst the marketing was sufficient and for a reasonable price, it is not considered that there is no interest in the property. Moreover, the recent interest directed at the council confirms that the building is still required for its intended purpose. With this in mind, it is considered necessary to follow TAN 6 advice and replace the condition with a more modern and flexible equivalent. Whilst the officer recommendation is to remove the agricultural occupancy condition, it's also to replace this with another restrictive condition. Therefore, the occupancy of the property should be therefore maintained for its intended purposes. In conclusion, the application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions outlined in the report and offers identified earlier in this presentation. Thank you.
Hang on.
Thank you very much, Amy. I believe.
Hello, Chair.
Sorry.
Could I ask Wendy to see if she can help Councillor Higginson to get into the meeting? I see his hand is up, but he doesn't seem to be able to connect up, and he would like to speak on the next item.
The
Okay,
first
well,
item or the
I'll go.
following item?
The following item.
Right, thank you. I'll leave the officers to try and address that, Councillor Easton. It's beyond my control.
Yeah.
Thank you for
okay.
highlighting that. Thank you.
Thank you. They're going
Right. I believe we now go to the Community Council first speaker, and then later on we take the local member after the applicant. Is that correct, Craig?
Yes, that's correct, Madam Chair.
Right. I believe Community Council, we have someone to speak, or are you reading it out yourself, Craig?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll read out the Community Council.
Right. Thank you, Craig. You carry on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Just for the people with...
Please introduce yourself, Craig, because you're not the Community Council.
I was just about to, Madam Chair.
Right, thank you.
I'm Craig O'Connor. I'm Head of Planning here in Monmouthshire. I'm just going to read out the statement from Councillor Ian Martin, who's representing Shire Newton Community Council. Shire Newton Community Council objects to the entire removal of the agricultural occupancy condition, but would approve a variation extending it to allow occupation connected to local rural enterprises on the following grounds, as we understand that a market gardener has expressed interest in acquiring the property. The site consists of a dilapidated bungalow, unoccupied now for some 11 years. The applicant asserts that the property has been on the market for over a year, and interest has come from buyers who in the main cannot satisfy the agricultural occupancy condition. Although an offer of $142,000 with the AOC remaining in place was rejected, the applicant has, however, impose an overage clause for further money to be paid in the event of discharge of the AOC or the grant of planning permission, which clause does not appear to have been factored into the property valuations by the selling agents nor the district valuer. The offer of $142,000 demonstrates that the property is sellable, albeit not at the price sought by the applicant, which is not a reason for discharging the AOC. Neither is the applicant's assertion that the AOC prevents him obtaining a loan for the cost of the renovation works, as if correct, the applicant's resource is the sale of the property. We now understand that the offer of $142,000 has been overtaken by a much higher offer from the prospective market gardener. This demonstrates that there are buyers who would fund the work. Indeed, we understand the applicant himself only acquired the site with the farm in very recent years. That no farm or forest employee has come forward either to buy or rent the property is more an indication of what they can afford. As a community or residents desire housing to be available at a price reflecting what our families can afford. Retaining the AOC constrains the market price, making the property more affordable for farm and forest businesses, and extending the AOC to rural enterprises would increase the market for such a property. Removing the AOC in its entirety would, at a stroke, release the property onto the private residential market, and the price would jump up by some 30%, pricing out any local or rural worker or enterprise. A single property like this is of interest to the housing associations being too remote to service. We note that the application is for variation or removal of the AOC, and we invite MCC to vary the condition to encompass the rural workers and enterprises and on those with an established local connection, such as families, on its housing list. We are grateful that MCC really discharges this AOC, as this plays an important part in maintaining the local landscape character for current and future generations. That's the end of the statement from Councillor Martin from Shire Newton Community Council, Madam Chair.
Right, thank you very much, Craig. We now, I believe you're reading it out as well from the applicant.
We now have a video recording from the applicant, Madam Chair. So if you just bear with me while I get the technology up with regards to this.
Right, thank you, Craig.
If members could just let me know when they can see Mr.
Yes, I can, Craig.
Brilliant. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a message from the applicant, Mr. Richard Harry. I will now press play. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon, Planning Committee. My name is Richard Harry, the applicant, and thank you for letting me address you this afternoon. The background to this application is that I bought the property at auction in 2016 with plans to renovate it. However, I didn't appreciate what impact the existence of the tie would have on my plans. Because of the poor condition of the property and the fact that I don't meet the tie in planning terms, I have been unable to obtain finance, and the minimum renovation costs are significant, at least £75,000. Therefore, I decided to explore if the tie could be removed, and I sought pre-application advice from Craig O'Connor in the planning department. He advised that if I wanted to remove the tie, then the property would have to be marketed. At this point, I determined that I would market the property with a view to selling it if I could achieve a fair offer, or if I couldn't, it was my understanding that I would have a good case to remove the tie. I have been fully transparent with the planning department. I made them aware of what was being marketed and the guide price, and no objections were raised. After 12 months, the marketing exercise unfortunately failed to secure a purchaser, so I submitted this application. Although the planning report is 11 pages long, the test applicable is actually very simple. Firstly, you need to be satisfied that the marketing exercise has been carried out correctly. Officers believe this to be the case. Secondly, you need to be satisfied there is no demand for this particular property. This is the point that the officer's report is incorrect on. So I would like to make 2 points clear to you with regards to the planning report. The first point is that officers have reached their conclusion that there is demand by classing mere expressions of interest that they claim they have heard. This is simply wrong, because demand is only proven if there is an acceptable and proceedable offer made by someone who can meet the occupancy condition. The fact, and I emphasise the word fact, is that the results of the DJMP marketing exercise, which has been running for 20 months, has clearly demonstrated that there is no such demand. They also make a statement about their belief that there is demand for rural enterprise dwellings in Monmouthshire generally. This is irrelevant for the purposes of determining this application. The second point to be clear on is that the evidence that I have submitted already proves there is no demand for the property as a rural enterprise dwelling, which is what officers claim. This has been proven because the DJMP marketing process sought to establish the background of potential purchasers when an inquiry was made. In other words, the net was cast widely on purpose to avoid someone being overlooked who had or wanted to set up a rural enterprise. No demand has been shown from any rural enterprise workers in the last 20 months. This means the removal of the tie is justified under Welsh Government guidance. In summary, I think that officers have not taken into account the DJMP marketing report, which should have been the basis on which demand was assessed. Instead, they've chosen to take at face value the expression of interest by some people who have approached them directly to ask about the tie. That simply cannot be right. The net result in proposing a rural enterprise condition is that the situation remains the same. What could be a desirable rural property remains unoccupied and deteriorates further. I think that would be an extremely sad outcome for all concerned. For the reasons I've mentioned, I sincerely believe that officers are making the wrong recommendation to you, and that complete removal of the tie is justified. Thank you for your attention.
Right, thank you, Craig. You also have a statement to read out as well?
No, I believe that's
it.
Yeah, Councillor, I've already read out Councillor Ian Martin's statement from Shire Newton, and then that is Richard Harry's applicant's video. So that's the public speaking done for this application, Madam Chair.
Well, Craig, on my report, it's got a written statement from Will Collins, applicant's agent.
That's
Chair,
that's on the next application, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm looking at the bottom of the sheet. Sorry about that, Craig. I should be paying better attention to that one. I was trying to listen very hard to the video. Right, thank you. I believe Councillor Brown now will go into discussion. I believe you're the ward member. Councillor Brown.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm the ward member for the Shire Newton ward. The application is for the removal of an agricultural worker and affordable housing tie from a dilapidated bungalow at Bushes Farm, Earlswood. There are 3 buildings on the farm, 2 of which have been granted permission to be private dwellings. In 1975, a planning permission was granted for the bungalow to replace the old stone farmhouse, with a condition that the old stone farmhouse be demolished or used for storage. The old stone farmhouse was not demolished, it was used for agricultural storage and then granted permission in 2018 for conversion to a residential property. Also in 2018, planning permission was granted for the conversion of a stone barn to a dwelling with a detached new double garage. In separate applications, the other 2 buildings have been given private market dwelling house planning approval, despite the idea that the bungalow was meant to replace the old stone farmhouse as a dwelling, not duplicate it, and there should be just 1 farmhouse, not 3 houses, 3 dwellings. The general planning policy is that there is a presumption against building in the open countryside, but exceptions are made for matters such as dwellings with agricultural ties, with another exception being gypsy and traveller sites. None of the 3 buildings from the same applicant have or will be making any affordable housing contributions, as they are existing buildings. A 2019 application removed the affordable housing contribution of £27,685 for the old stone farmhouse as a single barn conversion on viability grounds. In the officer report, the application for the conversion of the barn was also intended to have a contribution of £24,485 towards affordable housing.
Can I interrupt you there, Councillor Brown? This is all very well giving an update on all what's next door to it, but we're actually dealing with this application about the bungalow.
Yeah, sorry, could I be allowed to continue, because I'm coming on to that. Private market housing is available locally, but there is a need to retain the supply of rural and affordable dwellings to support our local rural economy and not price such rural enterprises out of the market. The officer recommendation follows national planning policy in TAN 6 to approve the widening of that tie so that its scope is widened and brought up to date to cover a rural enterprise and affordable housing tie. If the tie is removed, then it will just be sold as a private dwelling at an increased price and will thereby reduce the number of much needed rural enterprises and affordable dwellings needed in this rural farm-based area. As stated in the officer report, TAN 6 says where planning applications are received to lift existing agricultural occupancy conditions or where enforcement action is being taken for non-compliance with a condition, the planning authority should consider replacing the existing agricultural occupancy condition with the rural enterprise dwelling condition set out in that paragraph. This will often be justified to ensure that the dwelling is kept available to meet the housing needs of rural workers and local people in need of affordable housing. The officer report makes it clear that there is a demand in Monmouthshire for rural enterprises and notes that there have been 2 interested parties where the widened scope of the condition would exist. Unlike as has been stated from the applicant, it has not just been an expression of interest, it's actually been offers that have been made and I've been copied into those offers, so I know that that's the case. I therefore move for approval of the recommendation for a rural and affordable housing condition as recommended by the officer report. Also, Chair, I would like to have the opportunity to speak again before the vote on this matter, so I'm moving for approval of the recommendation for this to be widened to cover a rural enterprise as recommended in the officer report and as part of TAN 6 national planning policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I will now take, I believe, is it Jim Higginson or not? Because your hand is up, Jim.
Jim still can't get in. I got to try Alison now to see if she can get hold of him on the phone, but he's having problems, Chair.
Right, thank you, because his hand is up all the time.
Yeah, I think he got out. And
right, I'll take no notice of that at the moment, and I will ask Councillor Powell, please, to come in. Councillor Powell?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was quite concerned about this because I've been very strongly opposed to agricultural ties being lifted. But in the circumstances, if it can be a condition that it's used for a rural enterprise, I could support it. It is very important that we keep these smaller dwellings that were agricultural dwellings for people who are working in the countryside and for people who are of lesser means. If it's lifted entirely, this property would be sold for an awful lot of money, and someone will come from off that can afford to buy it, and yet again we're short of houses for our local young people, who young or middle-aged, whatever, who want to start up a business in the country. And I'm happy enough to start off with. I thought, oh no, I didn't, you know, I'd stick out for the agricultural tie. But if we can have this condition where it's still covering countryside issues like gardening, I could go along with that. So I second
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Giles Howard? Councillor Howard? Looks like Councillor Howard is having problems. No, Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, Giles is just trying to get in. I can follow all of this, no problem at all. And you know, having properties available is clearly a good idea. But given the background to this and the fact that it is in such a bad state, I wonder whether it's now gone out of the reach of the very people that we're trying to protect it for. Generally speaking, people in rural enterprises aren't exactly that flush when it comes to money to buy properties, and it strikes me that it could be out of their range, if you see what I mean. So by imposing this TAN 6 regulation on it, we are probably condemning it for being empty for an even longer period. So that does concern me a bit. I'm all right with the general principle of keeping properties available, but I just wonder if this one has gone too far. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. And also, at the time when it was built, there was a farm that it was servicing. That is no longer there. There is no land apart from a garden attached to this dwelling, and the average agricultural wage is less than £9 an hour. And when you're asking, or around about 200,000 for it as it is, and then spend what, 70,000+ to do it up, and also at a time when we had, and I think I can speak legitimately on this, when we had a lot of farm workers on the land years ago, and you had to justify having a cottage or something for them to live in. On big estates, they had no ties on them. They had a tight cottage to live in. It was low wages. The average wage for an agricultural worker today is less than £9 an hour. So I can't see how an agricultural worker, and there's no land there with this to establish any sort of enterprise. If you've got land somewhere else, you're going to have to travel, which is another big cost to anybody in an enterprise in the countryside. So I can't really see how, as Councillor Murphy says, that it can be of any use to anybody, and it will be left to deteriorate more and more, whereas it could add to the economy of the council with somebody living in there, you know, perhaps children going to school, perhaps having the council tax to pay. But as it is, it's contributing nothing whatsoever. And I can't see how keeping this restriction on it is going to be any help at all for this actual building where it is. It has been marketed, and yes, people can show interest, which you can do with anybody looking at any house, but it doesn't mean to say you're going to buy it. So I think that's
sorry, Chairman, could I interrupt here? I have actually been copied into emails of actual offers.
I will let you address that at the end when you sum up, please, Councillor Brown. And I can't see how anybody on that sort of salary could legitimately take on the purchase of that. So I would like to move on again now and see if anybody else wishes to comment. And I believe Councillor Howard can come in now himself. And we haven't got agricultural workers so much in the countryside, and most of the ones that have been addressed and built over the last 17 years I've been on the committee have been for family members that are working on the farm, which is very different ballgame altogether, because we've got so much more mechanised now, as even what we are doing here today. Councillor Howard, please.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Can you see me okay? Because I'm having
Yes,
problems.
I can.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So I've had to go in and out because there's something happening with the screen, and the functions for the camera and chat disappear.
As I say, we are mechanised, Councillor Howard. It's very different ball game.
Okay. Well, I've read the report, and it's logical and clear. And Kate explains the situation really well. You know, I found the original auction particulars for the bungalow that coincidentally enough was sold at auction at the Glenor Avenue in 2016, and a note on there, the particulars refer to the fact there's an agricultural condition on the building dating from 75. I tend to agree on this one with the ward member and the report, and just noting the contents of the guidance note for TAN 6, the practice guide. It does state it does explain the situation in 826 that, you know, should the new occupancy condition be attached to the consent, and it turns out that there isn't the demand, then, you know, the guide does give the opportunity then for the property to be marketed again and then brought back. So it's not shutting the door, and, you know, there is an opportunity for the applicant to appeal the decision should members decide to go along with the report. So, you know, on this one, I'm minded to support the recommendation as it stands, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Giles Howard. Councillor Murphy, are you back or not? No. Anybody else wish to comment?
My hand is up, Chair.
Right, I can't see your hand, Councillor Eason, but you carry on.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
I think I support most of the comments that Councillor Murphy and the other councillors said. What does concern me is that what Councillor Brown mentioned was on 2 occasions there have been maybe a £50,000 loss of Section 106 money, and this property would also probably fit in the same situation. So are we up against a situation where selling individual plots bid at a time will reduce any money coming back to for affordable housing? And is that a good policy that we should be able to support in the future? Because I think we're losing a lot of money which could be going to social enterprises as well. But back to this building, it doesn't possess any WC facilities or equipped kitchen. So really it's in one massive level of disrepair. And I would suggest possibly that should this be sold within the next 18 months, 2 years, another application going back to us, maybe for a major redevelopment of the property, which we're not really aware of at the moment. It's just guessing what might be in the future. So I'm not sure that we're getting the best value as a council out of these developments. But on the basis of the officer's recommendation to take this tie off might benefit in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Could Craig please update as to whether there is usually a contribution for affordable housing when they are barn conversions?
Yes, Madam Chair, happy to come in there. There isn't a financial contributions for change of use of commercial buildings into residential. No, there's not. And with this particular case, there isn't any. With regards to officer's recommendation, we're recommending the condition is modified and changed in line with TAN 6, so there wouldn't be an opportunity to claim any additional affordable housing contributions for this property.
Exactly.
It might be something that is looked at in the future, in terms of moving it from that affordable housing element into a private open market, but at this stage the SPG doesn't specifically look at agricultural occupancy conditions, but this could be something that could be reviewed if members wanted in the future.
Well, I would be interested, because last meeting we agreed to put a house where a caravan is, and that should have been demolished some years ago, and another contribution was lost there. I think that we should be looking for more contributions, quite honestly. Thank you, Chair.
If sorry, Madam Chair, do you want me to come in there?
Yes, you can do, Craig.
I mean, if members were minded to remove the tie, then it is within their gift to apply that affordable housing contribution if they wanted to. It's not within the supplementary planning guidance, so I think, as my guidance was last month, I don't think we have significant policy grounds to request that, but it would be in the committee's gift to apply that if they wanted to. So that is an option if you did decide to remove it, but obviously as officers we're recommending the condition as outlined in the report.
Well, on the basis you made last time, you didn't feel it was appropriate because you might finish up in sovereign appeal on things. What would be the officers' views on to members about looking at a contribution to social housing and things like that?
I think if we're looking at agricultural occupancy conditions, I think we need to review the supplementary planning guidance for affordable housing contributions and ensure that it's clearly outlined in the policy, because at the moment there's a couple of gaps which you've mentioned, Councillor Easton. I think you've picked up on a few good points, and that might need for that policy to be reviewed in the future.
Thank you, Chair.
But that is in the future, Craig, not with this present application.
But we can look at that, recommend that to the officers, they start looking at that for the future.
Yeah, that's fine, Councillor Easton. Thank you for raising that. Anybody else wish now to comment on this application?
Well, Amy wants to speak.
Right, Councillor Woodhouse.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't sure if you could see my hand or not. Just with regard to the 11 applications since 2014 for rural enterprise dwellings, have we got any idea of how many of these buildings we have throughout Monmouthshire with these sort of ties, with these sort of conditions, the agricultural tie or the rural enterprise conditions attached to them? I wonder if officers could give, an estimate on that.
The one thing I could tell you, Councillor Woodhouse, I did a bit of homework on these in the years that I've been on the planning committee. I've noticed that there are 10 agricultural workers' dwellings being built, and every one of those was for a family member to work on that farm. They are not broader than that for anybody, because we don't have like they did on the estates where you had farm workers in tied cottages. Everything is so much more mechanised that there isn't the demand, to my interpretation, and that speaks for itself, for casual or any other farm workers like there used to be. And I expect you can remember that sort of thing going on. So to me, it's very different to what it used to be when perhaps this policy was drawn up. But whether Craig can give you an update on how many there are in the county with agricultural ties on, I don't know. Can you, Craig? You're mute, Craig.
I was the first one today, Chair. Thank you. I'm just trying to find out from colleagues. We do keep a register of all the modern ones. So as you can imagine, this goes back decades, really, in terms of this tie being applied to cases. So we do keep a record of all the modern ones from about 2006. But I've just asked colleagues to try and get me the figures. So hopefully they'll be able to come back to me in this meeting. If not, Councillor Woodhouse, I'm more than happy to share that with members afterwards. But we do, it's difficult with some of the historical ones. We don't know until we look into the planning history as to whether they are or not. So I don't really have a direct answer, I'm afraid, at the moment. It is a piece of work that I'm more than aware of. We need to start working on a bit, really, in terms of getting a more detailed register of agricultural workers' dwellings. But as you can imagine, it's quite a significant piece of work which we need to put resources in, and obviously given where we are with things at the moment, it is difficult. But I think it's a piece of work that we probably need to put resources into and work on. But as I said, we do have a list. If my colleague comes back to me in this meeting, I'll refer that back to you, the numbers. But yeah, we haven't got a direct list. These properties are within Monmouthshire, and they are usually very historical conditions as well.
Right, thank you, Craig. Councillor Webb?
I'm not sure if it's appropriate, Craig. I live in one of these dwellings, or we live in one of these dwellings, such dwellings, a similar time, 1975. Do I have to declare an interest, please?
I don't think so. I'll refer to my legal colleague Denzel, but I don't think so, Councillor Webb.
Thank you.
I don't see how that would be a prejudicial interest to you at this stage. You might want to declare the personal interest, but I wouldn't think it was prejudicial at this stage.
Thank you, Denzel.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Councillor Alan Davis? Councillor Davis, I believe your hand was up.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Operator error there, I'm afraid. Personally, I think we should go with the officer's recommendation. I understand the points that have been made, but I think that's what the policy says, and we should follow the policy. And once again, I would be obliged if members would put their hands up to talk and not interrupt when somebody else is talking. It doesn't reflect very well on us, and we have a system here where people can, if they want to make a comment, they can raise their hand and you can call them as the chair. So I would be very much obliged if members would stick by that policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis, and I did highlight that when I gave my introduction in the beginning, as I will call you when necessary when your hand is raised, because as you say, it's very rude to interrupt. Thank you very much indeed. Anybody else wish now to comment? No, I will leave it now then to Councillor Brown to sum up, please.
Yes, thank you. I believe that the officer recommendation should be followed. The applicant marketed the property at 200,000, but the district valuer stated it was worth 185,000. And if the tie is removed, its value will be 265,000, an extra 80,000. In addition, to further impede any sale, none of the original applicant's estate agent's valuation of 2,000 took account of the overage condition that the applicant was placing on the property when offering it for sale. It means there is equivalent to a penalty clause on the land if a buyer purchased for 140k rather than 185k. They would still have to pay the seller the uplift if the agricultural tie was removed or the property extended any time in the next 30, I think it was either 35 or 50 years, meaning the buyer would have to pay the seller about 40,000 if the new buyer gained permission to remove the agricultural occupancy condition. All of this is despite the applicant not having to make any affordable housing contribution if the AOC is at any stage removed. The inquiry of the housing associations on affordable housing was a tick box exercise at best, and as mentioned in the report, did not make it clear that a housing association could apply to simply modify the condition. The new condition makes it clear that if there is no one eligible for the rural enterprise condition, then it can be considered for people eligible for affordable housing. The district valuer was asked after his main report about this extra overage condition and said as follows: it would be unlikely to have a major impact to the valuation, but the only real way of knowing this is if it was marketed without the overage clause. Even if it was advertised without this clause, the condition of the property, lack of land it comes with, may still deter prospective purchasers. However, despite all of this, the offer detailed in paragraph 6.5 of the report from an interested party has increased to 200,000 from emails that I've been copied into. It's not merely an expression of interest. I've been copied into emails that show this offer has been made. It won't be left I don't believe, in view of this, it will be left to deteriorate. And by extending the condition to rural enterprise, it opens it up to things like market gardening. This all demonstrates that there is an interest in this property despite its condition, and there seems no problems from the mortgage side of getting serious offers, and it will be contrary to national planning policy not to follow the officer recommendation. and will reduce the supply of affordable rural enterprises in the locality if the recommendation is not supported. We need more affordable rural enterprises, not less, and we certainly don't need more private market housing in the locality, particularly as the two other buildings, apart from this bungalow at Butcher's Farm, have already been granted planning permission to be private market dwellings with no affordable housing contributions being made. I would therefore ask the Planning Committee to support the officer recommendation. And I think it's been moved by me and it's been seconded by Councillor Powell. So I'd request that we could have a vote on approving the officer's recommendation to widen it to cover rural enterprises. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. So Councillor Brown now has moved to approve the officer's recommendation and seconded by Councillor Powell. Could I have a show of hands for that I've just read out? Thank you. Could we have a vote in the chat bar, please?
It's in the chat, Chair.
All I've got, Richard, is a list of names of the discussion. I haven't got a chat bar otherwise.
If your chat bar is open, if you scroll down, you should see the vote. Other members are.
It's coming up now. Sorry.
Okay.
This doesn't seem to be moving very well. Right, I've got it now. Thank you, Richard.
We've now had 11 responses, Chair. 9 are for approval, 2 are against approval. So I think that's quite clearly been approved. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much indeed, Denzel. Denzel is our monitoring officer. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I forgot to introduce myself.
That's quite all right. So that has been approved as the officer's recommendation. Thank you all very much indeed. Was there anybody at all that needed to highlight that they weren't able to vote, which sometimes happen and they have to give it verbally? I don't know whether Councillor Higginson has been managed to join us or not, I'm afraid. So now we will go on now, if that's all okay, to the next application. Is that all right with you, Craig?
Yes, Madam Chair. I believe colleague Andrew Jones is going to be presenting this planning application.
Right, thank you, Andrew. This is application DM 2020-01872, and this is Newport Road, Caldicot.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, members. And for the purposes of anyone watching online, my name is Andrew Jones, Development Management Area Manager for Monmouthshire County Council. So this is a full application for the change of use of an existing A1 retail unit to an A3 use hot food takeaway. This is proposed as a resubmission of the previously refused application, reference DM 2019-01648. And just to confirm, members, the application is presented to you today at the request of the ward member, as well as an objection from Caldicot Town Council. You can see the site on screen now, hopefully. So this, as I say, is a retail unit located in the centre of the town at number 9 Newport Road. Just move the slides on. So the application site says a modern retail unit and has previously been used as a cobbler's and a key cutting shop. That was used for existed for some time, was subsequently vacant and then became a vaping shop. But the unit is once again now vacant. There also is a rear access to the property from the car park to the rear. So you've seen the location plan. I've just gone through the slides now for your benefit. So this is the existing elevations and floor plan of the unit. Just move these on. This is the proposed plans for what would be the A3 use. So this is the unit here with the Empire Vapes signage to the front within Newport Road. That's just a further view of the premises. And that again there is the rear sort of service yard area. You can see the sign there next to the air conditioning unit. It's that unit by there. So the proposal, as I stated previously, seeks planning permission for an A3 use. This a use that would open at 12 noon and close at 11:30 p.m. each day of the week. The use would employ 5 full-time members of staff. The ground floor area of the unit would provide seating for up to 8 customers to wait whilst food is prepared, whilst the upper floor would be continued to be retained as ancillary storage. So in terms, members of the principal and material considerations, as of the 24th of February this year, the document Future Wales, the National Plan 2040, now sets out the National Development Framework for Wales, and it is the highest tier plan set in the direction for development up to 2040 in the country. Future Wales adopts what is referred to as a town centre first approach that recognises that good planning can help us to rethink the future of our town centres, which are moving away from their traditional retail roles. And this takes in account of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the retail sector as a further driver towards making our town centres multifunctional places. And within Future Wales, it is clear that matters are moving forward from our town centres that are more than just the extent of designated retail areas. Turning to our own local development plan, the proposal is to a unit with a primary shop frontage that is also within the central shopping area. It therefore falls to be considered under policies RET1 and RET2 of the adopted LDP. As I stated at the top of the presentation, a previous application in late 2019 for a change of use to A3 was refused. This was based on a failure to comply with policy RET1 and in particular the continuance of a number of A3 frontages, the building being vacant for a prolonged period of times during the day owing to the opening hours then proposed, that would only see the unit opening in the evenings. However, the officer's report for this proposal provides a detailed assessment and consideration of both retail policies within the LDP, and therefore, rather than repeat, I'll just draw out some key headlines from this. In the supporting text of policy RET1, it states that particular consideration will be given to helping and assessing proposals for A3 use within primary shopping frontages such as this for hot food takeaways that are closed during the day that make limited contribution to the vitality of the centre. In this case, however, it is now proposed to provide a hot food takeaway with the premises opening from 12 noon until 11:30. With the premises being open during the day, this would contribute to increasing footfall in the town centre, thereby boosting vitality and viability. In addition, whilst limited availability of marketing is available, the unit has been vacant for some time, and unfortunately, there are other vacant units within this area. Officers have carefully weighed up the unit remaining vacant versus it being brought back into use from lunchtime onwards. The ongoing COVID pandemic has unquestionably had a significant impact upon the retail sector, including our usage of online retailers, for example, and Caldicot Town Centre has been particularly impacted, and there are, as noted, other vacant retail units within the central shopping area. The 2014 LDP policy does not really reflect the changed economic climate, and officers consider that a more flexible approach should now be taken to help promote the vitality and viability of the town centre. And this is clearly the tone and direction of travel of the recently published and overarching Future Wales plan that I referred to earlier. This is also recognised by the Caldicot Town team, who observed that whilst they would like to see more retail units being taken up over food outlets, the market is not going that direction, and that on reflection, an occupied premises is a much more appealing option than an empty one, regardless of use, those being the words of the Caldicot Town team. In terms of other issues and matters of sustainability, the site itself is well located within the town centre and is within convenient walking and cycling distance to wider residential areas. In terms of design, the existing doors and windows to the shopfront would be required to be repainted, whilst any new signage would be subject to separate application for advertisement consent. To the rear, a new flue is proposed. However, given the context of the rear of the units as a service area, as you saw in the photographs, it's not considered that such a feature would appear visually alien or incongruous. However, in terms of amenity, and particular third-party amenity, I would suggest if members are minded to approve the application that one extra condition be imposed to secure details of the proposed flow to ensure amenity issues of third parties are safeguarded and these are retained in perpetuity. As noted, there have been objections made from Caldicot Town Council who have stated their concerns that there would be too many takeaways in the town centre. However, for the reasons identified in the officer's report and those that I've discussed this afternoon, it's not considered that on balance that the proposed change of use would cause unacceptable demonstrable harm to the vitality and viability of Caldicot Town Centre. Therefore, in conclusion, this application has been very carefully considered by officers who are satisfied that there are material differences to the previous refusal in 2019. The COVID-19 pandemic has, as noted, had a significant impact on our retail centres and arguably accelerated the changes in the ways in which we consume our retail goods. This particular unit has now been vacant for a prolonged time since the previous refusal, and the opening hours now proposed would enable more daytime activity. Crucially, the very recent publication of Future Wales as the highest tier plan now provides the planning system with current guidance that takes account of the significant changes within the retail and commercial sectors within recent years. Accordingly, the application is presented to you members today with the recommendation for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the officer's report, as well as the additional recommended condition in respect of the flue to the rear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I believe somebody is going to, perhaps it's you, the reading out for the Caldicot Town Council. Craig, are you reading it out?
Madam Chair, I believe Councillor Eason is going to represent the Town Council.
That's right. Thanks for reminding me. Councillor Eason, please. Thank you, Craig.
Do I speak for the ward member, Chair?
For the Town Council, it says here.
Yeah, do the Town Council speak for the ward member?
Yes.
Right, okay, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Right, go ahead, please, Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, as I stated earlier in the meeting, I will abstain on this decision because I'm speaking on behalf of the Town Council. Town Council members are concerned, or expressed concerns that within a quarter of a mile, there are 12 food outlets and 2 pubs. And they feel that to have another one is just not going to help the town centre much. They also illustrated that recently a fresh food and fresh shop and vegetable shop was opened in the town centre, but also note that when the lockdown is removed, there'll be no, the only non-essential properties coming back into business will be 2 gift shops, a card shop and a charity shop. So really they would like to see the developers find more ways of getting retail outlets into the town. Whilst I understand everything Andrew Jones has said, yes, there's a tendency to have a different sort of day life, nightlife within town centres. Really, that is the sum total of what the town council feel about this application. But the additional matter is that there is a consultation going on at the moment to enhance the whole of the town centre with a major financial input, and they're concerned that would this fit in with this and other takeaways fit in with that particular scheme. That is the town council's view, and I will abstain on the matter at the end, Chair. Thank you, and I don't think I need to sum up. Right, thank you you don't need to sum up, did you say, Councillor Eason? No, I don't think so. Right, thank you, Councillor Eason, for doing that. I now believe we have someone speaking as the agent.
Yes, Madam Chair, I was going to speak on, read the statement out from Will Collins, the applicant.
Right, thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. These representations are made by Rackham Planning on behalf of the applicant, the owner of an existing Caldecott-based business, in support of the application for a change of use from A1 retail to A3 hot food takeaway at 9 Newport Road, Caldecott. We are pleased to note that the approval of the application is supported by the case officer, Caldecott Town Council, Caldecott Town Team and Highways Development Control. We consider this proposal would benefit the town centre by bringing a vacant unit back into use, increasing footfall throughout the day and evening, whilst also helping safeguard the future vitality of the town centre. The unit has been vacant for 2.5 years and is currently having a harmful impact on the vitality of the street frontage. By being empty, the unit is detracting visitors from making a journey to the town centre and offering no support to the aims and purpose of the town centre. Therefore, this proposal offers an opportunity for the unit to have a positive impact on being brought back into use. The proposed opening hours from midday to 11:30 in the evening, Monday to Sunday, will engage premises with lunchtime trade and attract footfall throughout the week. Whilst noting that Caldecott Town Council recommended the previous application to be approved, we understand the concern that there are already a number of takeaways in the town centre. However, town centres all around the country are in a stage of transition, and with the shift to online retailing, there is simply no demand at the time for retail, as evidenced in the marketing assessment prepared by Bladden Property Consultants and the fact the premises has been empty for 2.5 years. Put bluntly, there is therefore a choice between an empty unit, which has a detrimental impact on the town centre, or bringing the unit back into a generate footfall and provide a service for the community. Council policy RET1 provides clear guidance that a change of use from A3 use is permissible if it can be demonstrated that the proposed use will not harm the vitality of the street frontage, or the premises have been vacant for at least 2 years and genuine attempts at marketing the existing use have been unsuccessful. Although one of these criteria needs to be satisfied, we consider that our proposal satisfies both. The proposed use would not harm the vitality of the street frontage. Indeed, we consider it would improve the vitality of it being open throughout the day and evening. And the marketing assessment confirmed that the premises has been empty for 2 years and genuine attempts at marketing the units have been unsuccessful. We hope that you'll be able to support our application made on behalf of Caldecott-based business owner this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Craig. As the ward member isn't here, I believe I could ask Councillor Clark to. You've got your hand up first of all.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, the ward member is here. It's me.
Oh, right, sorry. Well, I got confused then with Councillor Eason speaking on Town Council. Thank you. You go ahead then, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I must say that in view of the changes that have been made, I voted against the original application some time ago. But people are quite right when they talk about, you know, town centres must adapt to different circumstances. And in view of the changes that have been made, and one thing I hate to see within town centres is empty shops. And let's not forget that this is going to bring investment and employment to the town centre and fill what is now an empty shop, which is a bit of an eyesore to say the least. Then I am prepared to back this application, and I would propose that we accept the application. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davis. Sorry about that. Councillor Clark, please. Councillor Clark, your hand is up. I'll go now to Councillor Giles Howard then, if Councillor Clark isn't able to get involved.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. The first thing I think we should note that PPW 11 is the current plan, and obviously I realise that the report and agenda was prepped before it was introduced last week, but just in case it's challenged. First thing, much has been made of the proposed opening hours in the report, and that differentiates it between an earlier application that's going to be open from midday. But I think what we should be clear about is that there's no guarantee that the business would open from midday, and if it proved not to be worth it, then there's absolutely nothing or no control over the business owner just choosing to open in the evening. The other thing, and I find myself agreeing with the town council from a policy point of view, I think the recommendation in the report is clearly the correct one. Yes, it's been vacant for a very long time. I agree with the town team in that it's far better to have something in a building than a closed, shuttered up one. which brings absolutely nothing. But I just worry that nothing looks worse really, or suggests an element of decline, and maybe suggests further decline than seeing a cluster of A3 uses on the periphery of a town centre. We all know where they are. Lots of towns, and this is prior to COVID as well, where you get a lump of them all together. Sometimes they're not open till the evening. People are attracted at late hours of the day. Sometimes there's a mess. It worries me that it's perhaps, once it goes to A3, it'll be far harder to bring an A1 use back in the town centre. And looking at PPW 11 now, and that recognises that the issue of periphery of town centres, and just draws us back to the issue that will have to be addressed by the LDPs, that the retail area of the town centres are going to have to shrink, so we can concentrate those uses and make them more attractive places. So my head says the recommendation is right. My heart says it's not, and I just worry that it's not going to do anything for the town centre. And I really don't know how I'm going to vote on this one. I'm on the fence, but I can see the logical policy argument, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. My concern was the opening hours on a Sunday. I think 11:30 is too late, and 10 o'clock on the Sunday night would be quite sufficient. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. That's exactly my feelings as well on the Sunday. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I think it's quite a difficult one, because I can see the argument from the point of view of having to be more flexible because of changing town centres and so forth. But on the other hand, I can see the town council argument about having too many takeaways. And I just wonder if this is the right decision at the moment. I mean, nobody likes to see empty shops, but it says it's been vacant for 2 years. Well, a year of that period has been during the lockdown, and in some senses non-essential retail has had to close, for example, card shops and so forth, so I'm just wondering whether I think I will be happy with this application if it was in a year or two's time when we weren't under these restrictions, because I can't see anybody wanting to start a business at the moment in what's been termed non-essential retail at a time when they don't even know if they could be open, so why should they take on those things? Whereas everybody knows at the moment that takeaways are allowed, but will there be too many takeaways when we go to a post-COVID stage? So I think it's a bit too early from my point of view to support this recommendation. If in a year or two's time it's still in the same position and we're back to our normal retail situation, then I think it would be different, but that's just my opinion on it, and I don't know what other people think. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor David Evans, do you wish to speak? Thank you.
Yes, please, Madam Chair. My opinion changed from the last time you come up. What's been said and how Giles explained it was exactly right. Caldicot Town Centre is known as Chip Alley. We don't want that here in Caldicot. And that is what's stopping a lot of new businesses coming in. It has been said this afternoon that the fruit and veg shop opened officially on Monday. That's good, and I'm hoping that's going to fetch a different style of businesses. Hopefully, fetch them into Caldicot. I don't think the hours of opening is going to make any difference. And it's like it's been said, it could start off at 12 noon. It could not be doing very good. because we have got the fish and chip shops in the village or town. So, and if they do come in and open to 12, they're going to start taking business off them outlets. So my concern is that it's not going to work, and I'm a believer. Get the shops full, but with the right businesses. Could I ask, Madam Chair, if Andrew could show a slide for at the rear, please?
I'll ask him now. Thank you, Councillor Evans. Do you wish to comment any further?
At the moment, I would be voting against it.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Evans. Andrew, is there any way you can accommodate what Councillor Evans wishes?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I'm just trying to navigate the IT to help Councillor Evans. There we go.
Is that it?
Can I ask, Madam Chair, can I ask Andrew, please?
Yes, certainly.
Where the flue is coming out at the rear, Andrew?
Yeah.
Right, and then you're coming onto a flat roof. Yes?
Yep, yes.
Right. How far is that flue going up? Because you've got living accommodations along there and above the shops. So if that flue is only going to go a little bit higher than that flat roof, the smells of and the fumes are going to be going into them living accommodations. So what is the height of it, please?
I'm just going to check the drawings a second, Councillor Evans. I think that was the reason I'd suggested the condition. You can see there on the drawings. I haven't got a dimension on that drawing.
No,
Councillor Evans, but that was the reason I suggested that conditions to agree full details. That would include technical specifications for any noise or odour mitigation that we could consult with environmental health for agreeing as a condition discharge application. I think that would be appropriate. We've done that for other new A3 uses, and I think dealing with that way would give us the assurances that the technical spec wouldn't cause, you're quite right to raise it, issues of noise or odour. So I think hence my additional request for that condition, if members were minded to approve.
Well, Madam Chair, I wouldn't be happy until I knew that the environment and department would be happy with
that condition.
Yes.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Evans. Is that all right, Andrew?
Yeah. No, that's understood. I mean, the upper floor of the particular unit itself is only storage in this instance. So I appreciate Councillor Evans is concerned for neighbours the other side and further down the line. But I think so there are other flues, etc., in the vicinity. I think officers are satisfied that it would be appropriate to deal with it through condition and consultation with the relevant professionals. Thank you.
Yes, that's quite appropriate. Thank you, Andrew. All right, Councillor Evans.
Yeah. So, Madam Chair, as I stand now, I would be voting to refuse this application because of too many food outlets in the town.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Evans. Anybody else wish to comment?
Madam Chair, I have my hand up.
I can't see any hands now again. Right, Councillor Harris.
I had my hand up.
Right, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Right, thank you, Councillor Evans. Okay, Councillor Harris, you go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this premises has been empty. I think it's more than 2 years, 2.5 years. And and there's nothing more depressing than empty premises in a town centre. And as far as I know, as far as I've heard, Caldecott has got quite a high percentage of voids. That in itself stops people coming into a town centre. Obviously, the more shops that are closed, the less people are going to come into the town. To my mind, a functioning shop has to be better than an empty shop, and it's been pointed out that many of them are food emporiums. And if we say yes to this, it'll be another one. But the important thing here is public opinion. And if public opinion thinks this is a good outlet, it will thrive. If others there do not thrive, then that's because public opinion is not on their side. That's not our problem from the point of view of what will succeed and what won't succeed. The important thing here is to vitalise the town centre, and to my mind, having this emporium open and functioning is far better than just looking at the slide with the for sale sign slapped right in the middle of the window is just depressing. And as far as I'm concerned, I will be voting for this to go through and be opened. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Right, thank you very much, Councillor Harris. Anybody else wish to speak? Because I don't have any hands.
Yes,
in the chat.
Madam Chair, I've got my hand up as well, so I don't know how it's not being seen.
Is that Councillor Becker?
It is, yes.
Right, thank you, Councillor Becker. At least I recognise your voice because I can't see your hand or anything. Right, go ahead, please.
Thank you. My internet connection is a bit choppy, thanks to the homeschooling behind me, but yeah, I feel a bit of a scratched record on the subject of shop use on high streets. We've said in every single workshop that we've had that we need to be more relaxed about these change of purposes. We need to fill these units and change the idea of the high street to include retail, but not to focus on retail. Otherwise, we simply won't fill the shops. It has been empty for more than 2.5 years, this unit. It's not the pandemic. That's the state of the high street across our county and across the country. You know, if we want to breathe life into our high streets, the idea of having too many food outlets, I think, is a bit of a misnomer. I mean, in the last 16 years that I've lived in the area, it's only in the last couple of years that I've recently started to go to Caldecott to go out for dinner sometimes. You know, it's actually a benefit to the high street, depending on exactly what goes in there. But so I think that I would support it, and I think that I don't understand how we can go through all the other workshops that we go through about how to re-energise our high streets and then say, no, we don't want to do it. We want to, you know, glibly hold on to this pipe dream that somehow we're going to have, you know, tiny retailers open up in our high streets. It's simply not going to happen, and I think we need to support this to support the high street.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Becker. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Alan Davis again, thank you.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I haven't got a hand, so.
No, I haven't got your hand up either, so as long as you can make yourself known, that's fine. You go ahead.
I think the last two speakers have covered the points I was trying to make far more eloquently than probably I did. So as I said earlier, Madam Chair, I would like to move approval of this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Davis. If nobody else wishes to comment now, I will take that Councillor Davis is. Oh, sorry, Councillor Woodhouse.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I've been trying to raise my hand in the chat.
Yeah, it's a bit of technology.
Yeah, slight technical hitch, but we get there. Just to agree with the comments that have been made towards the end now, because that's been my thoughts all along. We do need to be flexible. We do need to sort of look to the future, and I can't help but see at the moment people are more comfortable with takeaway. Sadly, our lovely restaurants and cafes are shut. and takeaways are going to be with us for some time, I think. And when you look at areas like this where people are supporting takeaway restaurants, it's obviously been identified here, and you know, I just think we do need to think differently and start to, you know, the high street's changing. We don't know what it's going to be like post-COVID, and I just agree with what's been said by the last two speakers. So I would be voting for the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodhouse. Anybody else make themselves known if they wish to speak? Yes, Andrew?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to just quickly confirm, I know we've had a move for approval. I just wanted to confirm when members are voting that they're voting for the conditions as set out in the officer report, plus the additional condition to require full details of the flu to be agreed and implemented. Just wanted to just be clear so members are clear what they're voting for.
Right, thank you very much for that, Andrew. Councillor Webb?
Just the inclusion of the opening hours, the Sunday opening hours, has that been amended? That has been amended, has it, Andrew? So Sunday.
Well, I need to clarify with the motioning officer. As I understood, Councillor Clark had raised that. I think others had raised it, but I suppose we need to be clear in the motion that it's for the hours with the change to Sunday for 10 p.m. and the condition for the flu to be agreed, implemented, and retained.
Yes, thank you for that. Sorry, Chairman. Thank you.
That's all right, Councillor Webb. Thank you. And I would be happy with those opening hours, especially on a Sunday. So if that could be one of the conditions as well. And Councillor Davis, you're happy with those conditions if you wish to move approval again?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm more than happy with those conditions and I would like to move approval again. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Davis. Who wishes to second?
I'll second that, Chair. Matt Feekins.
Who was that? Is that you, Councillor Becker?
Feekins.
Welcome, Councillor Feekins. So there has been a move now. I don't know whether anybody has got their chat bar up for the vote. If not, we'll have to do it verbally, but otherwise we'll go to the vote, and that is for approval of the recommendations. Thank you.
Good afternoon again, Chair. We've
Thank
now
you, Denzel.
had 11 responses, 12 responses now. So that's 8 for approval, 3 against approval, and 1 abstention. So again, that motion has quite clearly been approved. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Denzel. So that's been approved. But the last item on the agenda today, I believe, Craig, you're going to present this. This is the presentation on Future Wales 2040, believe it or not, the national plan. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, if members could just give me 2 minutes while I just put up a presentation. Members can let me know as soon as they see the presentation. That'd be really useful for me.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yes.
Thank you, Craig. At the moment, I've had a question in the chat bar. Are we still recording?
Yes, we were going to record this for any members of the communities to listen into this key document. So if you're okay with that, if you're okay with that, Madam Chair, then I was going to leave it.
Yeah, that's fine, Craig. Yes, fine, Craig. You go ahead. Right. So this is a very exciting time. This is why we're here today to talk about. We have now adopted as a nation this new planning document, Future Wales, the National Plan 2040. This was published last week on the 24th of February, and this is now the highest tier plan in planning decision making. So it really is quite exciting in terms of how Wales as a nation has developed this framework, planning policy framework of how strategically we want Wales to grow and develop over the next 20 years up to 2040. So it is a new national plan. It was formerly known as the National Development Framework, but it is now the Development Plan, and it replaces the old Wales Spatial Plan. It is the Welsh Government's spatial vision for development from 2020
up to 2040. And it outlines where we should be investing in infrastructure and development for the greater good of Wales and its people. It's very, very much focused in terms of the well-being of the nation and ensuring that our communities are well served by ensuring that the economy is thriving and prospering, and ensuring that we are having the right level of growth in the right locations. So it does outline that by 2040, our population structures will significantly change. The way we work and the places we live in will also adapt, and the way we travel will also be significantly transformed. So planning for these changes is challenging, but also an exciting task, and it's filled with opportunities to make Wales a better place, which is in line with the well-being goals in terms of being a healthier, more resilient, more prosperous, more equal, and more environmentally responsible country going forward until 2040. It is a major milestone for us in Wales. It's really adapting and making the Welsh planning system really distinctive in providing an economic framework and prosperity, particularly following the pandemic that we're going to come out of. So this plan really does set things forward in a really positive way in terms of how Wales should look and how we should react going forward in terms of the economic challenges that face us all in terms of economic growth in Wales. And it also empowers plans at the regional and local scale to identify schemes and projects that benefit our communities and help to achieve our national ambitions. So this plan is the highest tier development plan. So the national plan is the top plan, which I'll show you a diagram in a moment, but it's the top plan tier of the planning system. So all planning decisions this planning committee make now going forward will need to be in conformity with this Future Wales document. You would have noticed in the agenda packs that there was direct reference to Future Wales and to the documents in the report. So going forward, you will notice now this is a key material planning consideration when we make decisions as Monmouthshire County Council. It's focused on solutions to issues and challenges at a national scale. It's strategic in nature, meaning it doesn't allocate land for development to all parts of Wales, nor does it include policies on all land uses. That is separated out via different frameworks. So that'll be built into strategic development plans, which will be plans for a regional level, and also our local development plan at our local level. And these two documents, the regional plan and the local development plan, which we have in Monmouthshire, will need to be in conformity with Future Wales. It's underpinned by the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act 2015, which demands the development and use of land contribute to improving the economic, social and environmental and cultural well-being of Wales. And it also ensures that it's done in accordance with development management decisions made after all development management decisions after the 24th of February 2021. So this is going to be a key policy document going forward. In terms of how the planning policy framework works in Wales, now this is just a key diagram showing you, members, how it is outlined in Wales. So here on the left, you can see that the National Development Framework, the Future Wales document, is for all of Wales. Then we'll have a regional plan, which is the strategic development plan, which Wales will be split into 4 regions: South East, South West, Mid, and then North Wales. Obviously, Monmouthshire sits within the South East Wales, and we will have a strategic development plan with our potentially the 10 councils within the Cardiff Capital Region. And then we have the local development plan, which makes the decisions on the local planning policy framework under our own existing LDP, as you are aware. Then also there is Planning Policy Wales, which establishes the key principles for the planning system. That has been recently updated to edition 11 in light of the publication of Future Wales, and I'll go into a little bit more detail on that in a moment. And then Planning Policy Wales is also supported by technical advice notes, which settles some key details with regards to policy, as we were just discussing with regards to Technical Advice Note 6 for rural economies. So going forward, we will have this suite of plans, one at the national scale, Future Wales, one at the regional scale, which is going to be developed now going forward, and then obviously our local development plan at the moment, which we are currently reviewing and looking at a replacement local development plan. So all of these policy documents, the development would need to be in conformity with all these elements of the plan. So Future Wales, the outcomes are quite clear within the document. It's a very positive document in terms of outlook, and really connected in terms of ensuring that we develop sustainable forms of development in Wales, and we ensure that we have the right development in the right places. So we want to be in a place where it's Wales, where people live in a well-connected area and inclusive, and is a healthy place, vibrant, place with thriving in the Welsh language, really sustainable forms of growth, prosperity. Some of the key words that are outlined within the document, and these are the key outcomes which this document really wants to ensure that in 2040 we're living in a place which is meeting all of these outcomes, and it is ensuring that we are having communities in Wales and people in Wales are having a much better life ultimately. And some of the other key themes there in terms of decarbonisation, climate change, biodiversity, green infrastructure, really prominent within this document. So really making strides to ensure that we are ensuring that we do construct the right types of development in Wales. So in terms of some of the policies, there's approximately 18 policies which are on a national scale, then there's more regional policies. Policy 1 is quite key to this. This is where Wales will grow. So this diagram gives you a bit of an indication of how the Welsh Government do consider Wales to grow, and this is now a key policy. The Welsh Government supports sustainable growth in all parts of Wales, and they have established 3 national growth areas. So that the growth areas are Cardiff, Newport and the Valleys, Swansea Bay and Llywelyn, and Wrexham and Deeside. So the national growth areas are completed by regional growth areas, which will grow, develop and offer a variety of public and commercial services at a regional scale. Future Wales does certainly recognise that development will be all across Wales, but does identify key areas for this particular high level of growth. And development and growth in town and villages and rural areas, so such as Monmouthshire, should be appropriate scale and support aspirations and need. And that's obviously specifically what we're trying to do in terms of the replacement plan. So we're really trying to address our local need, our local issues, by having the level of growth that we're seeking to have. But I think this policy is quite clear in terms of the more strategic, higher level of growth. It does show where Wales is looking to grow in the most sustainable locations with connections to public transport. And you can see the arrows there on the infographic showing where those key connections are, both internationally and obviously to the east with regards to connections to England. So it's really interesting. In terms of the level of growth, is approximately the document outlines 110,000 dwellings to be constructed. So it does talk about really ensuring that we do meet the needs and have that level of high level of growth over this plan period. So in the document, in the Future Wales document, there's a clear policy framework. These are the 18 policies outlined within the document. I'm going to go on in a few slides just to talk about some key ones for Monmouthshire's area in particular. But as you can see here, there are some really key policy considerations the Welsh Government are outlining in terms of supporting digital communications. There's consideration of mobile action zones, really making resilient ecology network and green infrastructure, flooding, ensuring that we have the right development in the right locations. Really strong in terms of delivering affordable homes and making sure that we address affordability within Wales as a nation and supporting the economy. There's also policies and reference to the development of a national forest in Wales, so the development of tree planting and woodland planting across the country to help with offsets our carbon emissions. There are some key detailed policies there. I didn't want to go through all of them in detail today, Planning Committee members, but obviously you could look at these policies in your own time. In terms of one of the key policies is policy 2, which talks about shaping urban growth and regeneration, and it really keys into Planning Policy Wales's document in terms of placemaking and what we've been doing in planning for a number of years now, ensuring that we do create places rather than just development, and we do have a positive contribution to our communities. So it talks about the growth and regenerations of towns and cities should positively contribute towards building sustainable places that support active and healthier lives, with urban neighbourhoods that are compact and walkable, organised around mixed-use centres and public transport, and integrated with green infrastructure. So it talks about creating a rich mix of uses within our town centres and in our areas. So having commercial and residential developments cohesively, and having people being able to walk and get travel to work quite easily. Providing a variety of housing types and tenures. Again, we've talked about this many times in LTP workshops with regards to ensuring that we have a mix of housing types for our communities here in Monmouthshire, and that is across Wales. They don't want to address one housing need. There is obviously a significant housing need across the country, which we need to address. Building better places at a walkable scale, so with homes, local facilities, public transports with walking distance of each other. Increasing population densities in certain areas, particularly urban areas. There is reference to 50 dwellings per hectares, which might be appropriate for some urban areas. In the Monmouthshire context, I think if we're looking at placemaking, I think we'd always be looking at sort of potentially, in terms of allocations, edge of settlements sites. So we have to think about placemaking. I know we've talked about a density of approximately 25 dwellings per hectare. So I think it's about looking at context there when we're looking at this placemaking, but certainly in certain parts of Wales, they may be able to achieve that higher density. We want to ensure permeability through network of streets with a hierarchy that informs the nature of development. And again, the green infrastructure, integrating green infrastructure into development and really making sure, I think we're all going through this COVID pandemic, we've all realised how important local walks, local connection to green infrastructure is really important to us. So planning authorities should use development plans to establish a vision for each town and city. This should be supported by a spatial framework that guides growth and regeneration and establishes a structure which towns and cities can grow and evolve, diversify and flourish over time. So I think that's something that we in Monmouthshire we're certainly already starting to look to do. I know my colleague Mark Hand is looking in terms of how we develop a vision for our town centres, and we've talked about it today, and we talked about a number of applications in terms of how we need to start thinking about a flexible town centre and look at different options in terms of how we progress with developments. I think there's some really key conversations there, and I think in Monmouthshire, not every town centre needs the same solution. We need to have a different vision for each one, and build policy framework around that. So I think that's certainly echoed and sort of supported within Future Wales. Two other key policies for Monmouthshire, I think, in terms of the Future Wales document, is Policy 4, which talks about supporting rural communities. So the Welsh Government supports sustainable and vibrant rural communities, and strategic and local development plans must identify their rural communities, assess their needs and set up policies to support them. So policies should consider how age-balanced communities can be achieved, where depopulation should be reversed, and consider the role of new affordable and market housing, employment opportunities, local services and greater mobility in tackling these challenges. And I think, members, you'd all agree that we've been discussing this in terms of our issues and objectives as part of the replacement local development plan. We do have an ageing demographic. Some of these key issues to our rural communities in Monmouthshire is clearly echoed within that policy in policy 4. So it's recognised that we do have to certainly address sustainable growth in those areas to help them to grow and to help them to flourish. Policy 5 also talks about supporting the rural economy, and it outlines the Welsh Government supports sustainable, appropriate and proportionate economic growth in rural towns that is planned and managed through strategic and local development plans. And strategic and local development plans must plan positively to meet the employment needs of rural areas, including employment arising from the foundational economy, the agricultural and forestry sector, including proposals for diversification, startup and micro businesses. The Welsh Government will also strongly support development of innovative and emerging technology, businesses and sectors to help rural areas unlock their full potential, broaden the economic base and creating higher paid jobs. So there is that recognition that we need to support the rural economy and have those diversification policies to help and support our citizens in Monmouthshire particularly. So I think they're two key policies to be aware of. Some other key policies with direct reference to our challenges and issues in Monmouthshire, I think, is the Town Centre First policy. Again, it was mentioned today with regards to the planning application we were considering, and I think we have to go further going forward. And I know Councillor Howard mentioned that in terms of going forward in the next replacement plan to really assess our town centres and are they working? Do they need to be the size they are? And I think that is clearly something that we will be doing as part of that replacement local development plan, and that is echoed within the national plan here, within the Future Wales documents, outlining that we really do need to ensure that they are fit for purpose and they have the right services to provide new commercial, retail, health and leisure and public services to be located in those town centres and are accessible via walking and other public transport as well. Policy 7 is quite clear within Future Wales document in terms of delivering affordable home. I think the Welsh Government really see a step change in terms of the increase in delivery of affordable homes by ensuring the funding for these homes is effectively allocated and utilised. Through their strategic and local development plans, planning authorities should develop strong evidence-based policy frameworks to deliver affordable housing, including setting development plan targets based on regional estimates and housing need and local assessments. So in response to local and regional needs, planning authorities should identify sites for affordable housing-led development and explore all opportunities to increase the supply of affordable housing. I know we've talked about this at length, members, in our workshops and at seminars with regards to the replacement local development plan. And I know this is a key objective of the plan is affordability in Monmouthshire, and that is echoed here within that policy 7 in terms of Welsh Government really do want to see a step change in terms of how we deliver affordable housing, and that is why we have been proposing to look at a 50-50 split in terms of affordable housing provision in our next replacement plan. So that'll be interesting to see how that develops. The last paragraph there just outlines the housing need estimates. The provision of affordable housing should become a key focus for housing delivery. It's estimated over the next 5 years, so up till 2024. Under the central estimate at the moment, the estimated annual additional homes are split almost equally between affordable housing and market housing. This represents an approximate 48% split for affordable housing and 52% for market homes. So this is very clearly linked to what we were discussing in terms of a proposal for the 50-50 split in our next replacement local development plan. So I think that just shows the direction of travel from both the Minister for Housing in Welsh Government and the Welsh Government as a whole in terms of their need to deliver affordable housing across the nation. In terms of travel across Wales, it's quite clear in the document that we are in a modal shift in terms of the need to reduce the need to travel, particularly by private vehicles, so supporting walking, cycling, public transport, and the sustainable transport hierarchy in planning policy Wales is quite clear in terms of prioritising active travel and public transport is fundamental to where we're seeking to go with Welsh Government. So we will be moving away from private motor vehicles, and that should be the last option. Active travel must be essential and integrated into all developments, large and small. And as planning authority, we must integrate site allocations, new development and infrastructure with active travel networks. So there really is a push there to ensure that when we're looking at all developments, that we are looking to make sure that we do have clear permeability, access to our town centres. And I think here in Monmouthshire, we really can achieve that with our particularly our sustainable settlements. We can really have those active travel routes and really encourage people to walk and cycle to their town centres. The Future Wales documents also clearly outlines that we need to reduce levels of car parking in urban areas, include car-free developments as well. So really is a shift away from decades ago when we really were relying on the car. And I know there is a difficulty in Monmouthshire with that in terms of us being a rural area and a bit more of an isolated area. And I think we need to balance that really. There is a recognition in Future Wales that rural authorities will need to look at this carefully. But I think we just need to ensure that we have the planning policy framework in our local plan to enable this to happen and really get the investment in active travel networks. In terms of the regions, as I said, Monmouthshire, as you can see here, we sit down in the southeast region. The Wales will be split into 4 regions, so southeast, southwest, mid Wales and the north. And this diagram just outlines how that is split. So Monmouthshire will sit within the 10 authorities within the southeast Wales region, and that replicates the Cardiff capital region. So that work on that is due to start hopefully by the CGC towards the first meeting supposed to be happening by the end of this year, and then from that then the strategic development plan will start to be developed, and that will allocate land for development then. So the strategic development plan will embed placemaking as an overarching principle and should establish for the region a spatial strategy, a settlement hierarchy for the region, for the South East Wales region, the housing provision and requirements for the housing numbers for that area, the gypsy and traveller need, the employment provision, the spatial area for strategic housing, employment growth and renewable energy, the identification of green belts, green corridors and nationally important landscapes where required, key services, transport and connectivity infrastructure, so where that will be located across the region, and a framework for sustainable management, natural resources and cultural assets. So this strategic development plan has got a significant amount of work to do in terms of outlining where as a region, the South East Wales region, where this type of development should go. And it obviously on the bottom there as well, it talks about looking at protecting and enhancing connectivities to the green infrastructure and working as a region. So it really is changing the planning system in Wales to think firstly on the national level as Future Wales, secondly as a region as part of the South East Wales region, and then thirdly obviously as a local issue in terms of Monmouthshire's own issues, how we look to allocate development more locally. So there really is that free tier. So it really is quite exciting, really, is how we move forward now in looking at a new planning policy framework. So this is the South East Wales region where Monmouthshire sits, obviously quite a significant land mass there in terms of to the east of the region. In terms of the region as a whole, there's some statistics there, a population of 1.5 million approximately, with Cardiff being the largest area and Merthyr Tydfil being the smallest area. There's been a 9.6% population increase over the decade, 20 years, 1998 to 2018. Cardiff is the largest area growing. 70% of the people aged 16 and over reporting good or good health. Again, we have 18.5% of people 65 and over, so there is an aging population, and particularly I think that's a bit more exaggerated. And we have higher figures of aging population here in Monmouthshire, but it does show that we have some of the very similar issues across the region in terms of an aging population and how we address that, and the need to travel as well. So I think the average people there travelling approximately 16 kilometres, people travelling to work, which we are seeking to change. And I think the pandemic will change that in terms of how we work. People are working much more virtually nowadays, and I can see that being embraced going forward. So in terms of policy 33, national growth area, so Cardiff, Newport and the Valleys will be the main focus for growth and investment in the South East Wales region. On the right there, you can see the infographic, which shows the national growth area, which is the purple highlighted area. It just touches some elements of Monmouthshire to the east. But it does show you there the grander scale, and so it shows you the national connectivity with where the rough links are in terms of the links to England, and also to the rest of Wales with the ports. And the green indication, the infographic there in terms of Monmouthshire, that is where I'll come on to in a moment, but potential for a green belt has been allocated. It hasn't been allocated in Future Wales. It just outlines that we need to give consideration for a green belt to be allocated in this area. I will come on to that policy in a moment, but you can see there from that infographic where that touches into Monmouthshire. The purple area in Monmouthshire, where Monmouth is, that's the allocation of the area of outstanding natural beauty. So that's the Wye Valley area of outstanding natural beauty there. So that just gives you a bit of an indication. So Welsh Government will work with regional bodies and local authorities in the region and neighbouring regions of England to promote and enhance Cardiff, Newport and the Valleys, given a strategic role, ensure key investment and decisions support places in the national growth area and the wider region. So it really supports an increased strategic role for Newport as well as part of this. It sees Cardiff as being the hub and retain and extend its role as the primary national centre for culture, sport, leisure, media and the nighttime economy, but also sees a role for Newport in terms of focus for sustainable long-term growth and investment. And it supports coordinated regeneration investment in the Valleys area to improve the well-being, increase prosperity and address social inequalities. So really trying to focus development in these sustainable locations with regards to the connections there. In terms of a couple of other key policies for the South East Wales region, as I've touched upon, policy 34 outlines that the Welsh Government requires the strategic development plan, the regional plan, to identify a green belt to the north of Cardiff, Newport and the eastern region to manage urban growth and form. So the STP will consider the relationship of the green belt with the green belt in the west of England. And the LDP and development management decisions should not permit major development in the area shown for consideration for green belts, except in very exceptional circumstances, until the need for green belts and their boundaries has been established by an adopted STP. So as you can see, the green belt does come into Monmouthshire. It goes just to the north of Chepstow from that infographic, within the AONB, and stretches across then just north of Newport and to the north of Cardiff. So the exact location of that green belt hasn't been established yet. I think the SDP needs to consider that relationship and needs to consider exactly where the green belt is allocated. And this infographic just gives us a rough idea of where that green belt could potentially be located in the future. But I think it is acknowledged that as going forward, we obviously development proposals within that area, we would need to have conformity with the Future Wales document. So we will have to consider development in terms of planning policy Wales and the criteria there for allowing development within that green belt area. So going forward, we do need to evaluate development proposals in those areas in terms of will it have a detrimental or adverse impact on the potential for a green belt in the future. There's also discussion of policy 35 for the Valleys Regional Park. So Welsh Government supporting the establishment of the Valleys Regional Park. And policy 36 also outlines the Welsh Government support the development of a South East Metro, and will work with Transport for Wales and local authorities and other partners to enable its delivery and maximise associated opportunities for connections. And in that bottom right graph there, you can see that there is development, and it just touches in terms of Chepstow connecting up there to the South East Wales region. So there are potentially benefits there for particularly for the south of the county, and obviously for Abergavenny as well. And there is that connection to the South East Wales region. So in terms of other matters that have arisen last week, so Future Wales have been published as of the 24th of February. TAN 8, Planning for Renewable Energy, and the Welsh Spatial Plan are now revoked. A new edition of Planning Policy Wales has also been published last week, which aligns with National Policy Framework for Future Wales and reflects legislative and policy and guidance as outlined in Future Wales. So it was ensuring that all those documents now align. Planning Policy Wales Edition 11 also makes reference to Building Better Places, which is the document the Welsh Government have issued in light of the impact of COVID, particularly in regards to our town centres, and ensuring that we are adapting and being flexible in terms of supporting the economy during these difficult times. It also outlines some other policy changes with regards into housing delivery, and there's also some changes to the affordable housing section being updated to reflect the Minister's policy statement in July 2019. So yes, there are some significant changes within the Planning Policy Wales Edition 11 document as well, just reflecting the importance of the Future Wales document. So it is a really exciting time in terms of going forward. It's a real key document for Wales. I think it's really ambitious in terms of its projections, in terms of how we develop and grow sustainable growth in Wales. And it's quite clear that there is a strong need to deliver affordable housing, protect our environment, and ensure that we do construct the right development in the right places, which is key for us all really, and really puts that emphasis on placemaking. So really key document. So it's really exciting, and obviously going forward, this is going to be key to all of us when we're making decisions. So just wanted to brief members on this document, and I suppose open to the discussion now really. Is there any questions or queries that members have on the document and how we're going? So thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, I don't know if there are anybody where I'll put the chat bar back up, but I don't know if anybody's raised their hand to wish to speak, but they can by all means wish to.
I think it's kind of.
Yes, I think Councillor Howard is the first one, and then Councillor Brown. Thank you, Councillor Howard.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, the awkward squad first. Okay, yeah, I've got a couple of questions, and mainly about policy 1 and 33 first. Both in 33 in particular notes that the growth in South East Wales is to be accommodated mainly in Newport. We're clearly outside the national or regional growth areas. Monmouthshire's got some of the best agricultural land, which Future Wales seeks to protect. We've got high levels of commuting and poor transport infrastructure. So when I hear talk about growth on the edge of settlements, it worries me, because that's what happened for years and years, and it doesn't suggest a change of approach of the sort that Future Wales is looking for, more business as usual. And I think I referred to this in a previous council session, probably before lockdown started. The figures that we've talked about as our spatial options and preferred growth strategy, I forget what they are off the top of my head, but I made the point before that certainly for my employer, that was considered, and given that RCT's the population is what in the region of 300,000, what we were proposing in Monmouthshire was considered to be a high growth option there. So what I'm concerned about then, since we're not going to have an SDP for several years, how are we going to justify a particular level of growth and compare it then with other counties that have higher populations within the South East Wales area, when ours might look by comparison a ridiculous extreme when it's not in the national growth area? So that's the thing really, how are you going to correlate with other local authority areas prior to an SDP to make sure you time with a plan? Craig also referred to policy 2, and a lot of it, yeah, of course it's relevant, the placemaking, and that's wrapped up in PPW 11 and was in 10 as well. But the plan makes it clear that policy 2 is specifically focused on the growth and regeneration within the national and regional growth areas, which again is not us. And of particular interest then was policy 34 and the green belt. The text on page 172 of Future Wales states that the areas shown for consideration for green belts should be treated as if they've been designated as such before SDP comes along. So the strategic diagram on page 163 that Craig showed us as part of the demonstration is really broad brush. It's like the diagrams in the old spatial plan. You can't tell how it relates to boundaries, settlements, etc. So the question to Craig and I suppose the plans team is, how are you going to plot the green belt area so that we can demonstrate compliance, both for us as elected members making decisions and for officers to be able to refer to? Because clearly we've got to approach it now as if it's green belt and not wait for the SDP. I tried to work out myself where it related to, and I had hoped that it would be on the Future Wales online map, which is a useful tool, but only a couple of the policies are mapped on that. But, you know, for example, you referred to north of Chepstow. Well, if you look at where the black blob of Chepstow is, that's kind of the estuary. If you look at where Newport is, that's the mouth of the river. It's not actually where the settlement is. So where that national growth area looks as though it's coming into Monmouthshire, I'm not sure it is. That looks more like it's Langstone, because I don't think it's plotted accurately. So yeah, a couple of questions there, and sorry to be first out of the store, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Louise Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't know whether Craig wanted to answer the questions raised by Councillor Howard first, or should I come in now?
Well, whichever Craig prefers.
Yeah, I'm happy to come in now if that's fine by members. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Councillor Howard. Yeah, some really interesting points there. In terms of policy S, I'm trying to think what it is now in terms of S1 strategic policy, but in terms of Future Wales policy 1, where Wales will grow, I think it's quite key there in terms of the Welsh Government supports sustainable growth in all parts of Wales. So I think there is a key recognition that there are 3 national growth areas. There are specific areas where employment and housing should be sort of prioritised, and infrastructure and investment in infrastructure should be quite significant in terms of the national picture, the national scale. But it is quite clear the Welsh Government is supporting sustainable growth in all parts of Wales. And obviously, if we look at that in terms of the Monmouthshire context, that is key to Monmouthshire in terms of what we have outlined in terms of what our issues and objectives are. So the key issues and challenges we have in Monmouthshire for our communities in terms of the affordability, the ageing demographic, the connectivity. I think there are some key issues there, which obviously we need a level of growth to address our own issues and our own objectives. And I think this document is quite clear in terms of supporting rural locations and supporting the rural economy, and development is all about that. It's not just about housing, obviously it's about creating jobs and creating commercial ventures and development opportunities as well as. So I think it is about that sustainable development piece and ensuring that we have the right development in the right locations. And as we've discussed many times, we could potentially enhance our sustainable transport links potentially by having that level of development which is warranted. So I think there is a disconnect there in terms of, you know, the Future Wales is such a strategic national picture plan, and that's what it's there to do. It is there to identify where those key national levels of growth should go. It talks about 110,000 homes over that plan period. In terms of our replacement local development plan, we were looking at 7,600, I think, was option number 5. But of that, there's only 2,945 new allocations. So there isn't a significant amount. When you compare that to 110,000 across the nation, Monmouthshire would only be allocating with that option, if that option was considered by the council going forward, to meet that need. So in terms of I think there's a key distinction there. Future Wales deals with it on a national picture, looking strategically in terms of where that development growth should go, and then we have our own local development in Monmouthshire, allocating land for development which is sustainable, is ensured, is underpinned by placemaking principles, and ensures that it enhances and positively contributes to communities in Monmouthshire. If we don't have a certain level of growth, we really can't address those key issues. And as you can see from Future Wales, it's clear on delivering affordable housing, and we need those developments to come forward in Monmouthshire to deliver that level of affordable housing and really to ensure that we sustain our communities and ensure that going forward we're able to support them, because as we've discussed in many workshops, having an Asian demographic is going to put pressure particularly on our communities going forward in the future. So I think I think the level of development is in conformity with Future Wales in terms of Welsh Government does support sustainable growth in all parts of Wales, and that just needs to be proportionate and sustainable for those particular areas. So I certainly think that's a positive thing. In terms of the green belt, yes, it is a bit difficult in terms of the infographic that we have got at the moment, and the strategic development plan going forward will allocate that land, and we have more definitive map of where that will go. We have started discussions as a region in terms of front loading the research work and the work needed to identify where that green belt should go and should be allocated. So it's likely that the work on that green belt and where that is allocated will happen sooner, and as we discuss that as a region, we'll be able to develop that going forward, and that'll feed into the STP hopefully. So hopefully we will be able to develop that going forward. But obviously this infographic was published last week on the 24th, and as officers we're still trying to digest that and the implications for that. But at the moment we have that diagram to work off, so any major development in that area, and we will have to give it significant consideration in terms of planning policy Wales and what is allowed in a green belt. So going forward, we will be looking at applications in the system and advising applicants and developers accordingly. I mean, a lot of that area is rural countryside at the moment, so it's a lot in terms of Monmouthshire's impact. We wouldn't develop significantly in the area of outstanding attributes, and we wouldn't potentially allocate any land for development in sustainable open countryside. So I don't think it has significant implications for us going forward. But I agree with you, we could do with more details, and I think we need to work with the region to front load some of that work.
Thank you very much, Craig. I'm sure that's a good explanation for Councillor Howard. Councillor Louise Brown.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. The question I got was looking at policy 34, because that's on the green belt, and it mentions about no major development in areas of consideration for the green belt, and then obviously it's the question of the adopted SDP, but presumably on the adopted SDP you can't adopt it on a partial basis. you know, for just greenbelt policies. You'd have to look at it as a whole. And how does the SDP, the adopted SDP, what stages does it go through, and what consultation is there with the local communities on it? Because obviously the LDP has a lot of consultation. You know, it wouldn't seem correct to have a lot of consultation on the LDP and then have it overridden by the SDP. So how will the two interlink, and is there, you know, timetables for each, and what likely dates are the LDP to be adopted in comparison with the SDP? Because it does leave a lot of questions. And again, the question again is about the growth option that's been put forward, which is a high growth option, in view of the fact that the national growth option is centring development in Cardiff, Newport and the valleys. We've, in a sense, the suggestion of 7,500 houses approximately in Monmouthshire doesn't really seem to relate to the fact that there's an area of consideration of the green belt in the south, and then in the north there's considerations with regard to phosphates in rivers and their impact on development. So, and during the last plan, I think about out of the 4,500, only about 3,000 of those have actually been built, and our completion levels wouldn't, based on deliverability, wouldn't sustain 7,600 in any event, because our build rate is about 269 dwellings per annum, and if you times that by 15, you get nowhere near 7,600. We've also got infrastructure problems in terms of sewage and roads and everything else. So, you know, I don't know how sustainable such development would be. So to align our plans more clearly with the national future framework, then surely we've got to look at what our growth options are and how realistic and deliverable they are, because that's the test now, is robust evidence on deliverability, I presume based on previous completion rates, not unrealistic ones on odd years. You know, the completion rate over the last 15 years has been 269 per annum. The last 5 years, 310 per annum. You might have got the odd ones of 500 per annum, but we're basing the 7,600 on 500 per annum, which isn't practically realistic, and it's not going to be the 5-year supply anymore. It's going to be about how deliverable these actually are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Craig, do you wish to answer anything of Councillor Brown's concerns?
Yeah, I'm happy to come in there, Chair. In terms of the green belt and the STP, so the Corporate Joint Committee will be developing the STP, and the Welsh Government have outlined specific strategic development plan regulations to how that plan will develop and how it will ensure that there is full consultation on the document with local communities and the region. So it will go through that process. It'll be examined by Welsh Government. It'll go through a very similar process to a local development plan. So there will be full consultation with communities and full opportunity for people to engage in Monmouthshire and in the other councils across the South East Wales region. So just to reassure you that piece of work will certainly happen, Councillor Brown. There are specific STP regs, regulations in place, which will need to be adhered to in the same way that a local development plan has to go through that level of consultation. And that's obviously the level of engagement we want with our communities to ensure that we do put the right development in the right places. I think in terms of the discussion on the growth level, I think this, obviously there is a discussion there to be had really in terms of the council and how it sees itself going forward, but very much so, as I said in my previous answer, really, in terms of we do have local issues and local challenges here to address, and I think it is about ensuring that we do have sustainable development to meet Monmouthshire's needs and to meet Monmouthshire's housing delivery targets and to address the affordable housing challenges we have here in terms of affordability. the plan, the Future Wales plan does outline the need for 110,000 homes across Wales. And in terms of, although we're saying, 7,605 homes in that proposed option for the replacement plan, it's only 2,945 new allocations on new sites. So, and given the scale of Monmouthshire and the level of the challenging objectives we have here in terms of the challenges which we need to address, I specifically don't feel that level of growth is significant, and it is proportional with regards to what Future Wales is trying to achieve by ensuring that we support rural economy and rural. But the replacement plan obviously does need to go. It does need to go through that process, and we certainly need to have engagement and see where the council wants to go with that. And it is going through that process at the moment, and we'll see what comes out in terms of how the council wants to move forward, and particularly in line with Future Wales and with us seeking to achieve by supporting the rural economy, delivering sustainable places, placemaking, etc. But I certainly see the replacement plan as being key to that, and having conformity with the Future Wales documents like it should. So we'll see in terms of how we move forward with that. And I'm not sure if it's worth mentioning, obviously, the last time that we did go through the LTP process, it was quite clear that we have to increase our housing numbers as well. So the projection in this LTP is for 450 dwellings per annum. And that was increased by the planning inspectorate when we went through the examination process, because it was considered that we would need to deliver more housing. The current option that we've gone out for consultation on just in this last January was for 507 homes per annum. So it's not significantly different from where we are now, but it is key to addressing affordability and having a key affordable housing policy, which is based on 50-50 provision going forward. So I mean, the replacement local development plan has got a number of stages just to go through, and this is for consideration for members really to consider what level of growth they want to see going forward for Monmouthshire, and how you as members want to address those key challenges.
Thank you, Craig. I've got Councillor Howard again. Is this going to be an all-members seminar? I know it's very convenient now to do it. Planning members, obviously, all on board this afternoon. But will it be a presentation for a seminar for all members?
Yes, we can certainly do. I mean, I've put it on the agenda today for planning committee. Obviously, it's key to the work that planning committee members are doing on a monthly basis. In terms of, this is now a key decision-making document, so we will be considering this document with every plan decision we make. So, but yes, Madam Chair, we can certainly put it into one of the LDP workshops and maybe discuss it further there in terms of how that relates to Monmouthshire's replacement plan. That might be a good idea, actually, to have a good discussion on how that all aligns.
Right, thank you. Councillor Howard.
Yeah, thanks. It's only a quick one, and I just really wanted to come back on a point that Craig raised. Our population is about 6% of the 1.5 million in the Southeast Wales region. The plan identifies about 66,000 houses up to 2039. Even if you ignore the fact that the plan identifies priority growth areas, our percentage of, based on 6% of the population, if you shared that out, the 66,000, that would mean just under 4,000 houses in Monmouthshire up to 2039, which is almost half of what we've been considering so far. If you then add on to the fact we're not a priority area, we're not a national growth area, that's why I have concerns that even though, yes, we know there's affordable housing, yes, we might have local aspirations, yes, it's about sustainable settlements locally, that still doesn't add up to what's in the plan. There's a big disparity, and I just don't see at the moment how that can be justified, but there we are, we'll see. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Anybody else wish to speak as well with Craig? Anything else we need to draw attention to? If not, perhaps I should draw the meeting to a close. Anything else as far as officers are concerned, Craig?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Right, thank you very much indeed, and thank you for all the members who've stayed this afternoon for that presentation. And I must thank you all for your attendance, and keep safe, and hope to see you, well, some of us next week, I expect, or whatever, on remote. We don't know who we're meeting who very often these days. But anyway, thank you all for your attendance. Thank you. And I will now close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, I think we'll get in about the last half hour.
Right.